Have you ever had that feeling? That prickly sensation on the back of your neck when you know you're not alone, even though you should be? Well, get ready to feel that a whole lot more. Today, we're diving deep into the corners of Reddit to bring you 5 stories that will make you double-check every locked door. So turn down the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin. Our first story comes from a user who is house-sitting for a wealthy family in a remote, sprawling mansion. The first few days were a dream. Huge TV, gourmet kitchen, an indoor pool. What could go wrong? Well, it started with small things. A book misplaced, a door left ajar that he was sure he had closed. He brushed it off as his own forgetfulness in the huge house. But then came the third night. He was watching a movie in the basement theater when he heard it, a faint rhythmic tapping coming from upstairs. Right above him in the main living room, his heart hammered in his chest. He muted the TV. He told himself it was just the house settling, old pipes, anything. He tried to restart the movie, but the sound started again, faster this time. It sounded like someone was impatiently drumming their fingers on the hardwood floor. Gathering all his courage, he crept upstairs, his phone's flashlight cutting through the darkness. The living room was empty, still and silent. He checked all the windows, all the doors. Everything was locked tight. He spent the rest of the night huddled in the master bedroom, jumping at every creak. The next morning, he found a single, deep scratch on the polished floor right where the tapping had been, a scratch he knew wasn't there before. He never house sat there again. Next up, we have a tale from a user who worked a night shift at a small 24-hour convenience store in the middle of nowhere. His nights were usually quiet, filled with stocking shelves and listening to podcasts. One Tuesday, around 3 a.m., a man walked in. He was tall, wearing an old, ill-fitting suit, and his smile was too wide, too fixed. He didn't say a word, just walked up and down the aisles, picking things up and putting them back in the wrong places. Cereal in the freezer, milk in the chip aisle. The clerk, trying to be polite, asked if he needed help finding anything. The man just stopped, turned his head slowly, and that unnaturally wide smile seemed to stretch even further. He just stared. For a full minute, he just stared, not blinking. Then, as if a switch was flipped, he turned, walked to the counter, placed a single melted chocolate bar down, and paid with exact change. He left without another glance. The clerk, completely unnerved, locked the door behind him and watched as the man simply stood across the street under a flickering streetlight, smiling that same horrible smile until the sun started to rise. Our third story takes us camping. A group of friends decided to go on a weekend trip deep into a national forest, miles from any official campsite. The first night was perfect, a roaring fire, good company, and a clear, starry sky. They fell asleep to the peaceful sounds of the forest. But around midnight, one of them, we'll call him Mark, woke up needing to use the bathroom. As he stepped out of his tent, he noticed the fire was still embers, casting a faint glow. But something else was glowing too. Off in the distance, between the trees, were 2 small, faint lights, hovering about 6 feet off the ground. They weren't moving, just watching. He thought it might be an animal's eyes, but they were too steady, too bright. He quietly woke up his friend, who saw them too. They watched for what felt like an eternity as the lights slowly, silently began to move, not towards them, but parallel to their camp, as if circling them. There was no sound, no snapping twigs, nothing. Just 2 silent, watching lights gliding through the dense woods. They didn't sleep a wink for the rest of the night. In the morning, they found no tracks, no sign of anything out of the ordinary. It was as if the lights had never been there at all. This next one is a quick but chilling encounter from a user who used to live in an old apartment building. Her apartment had a long, narrow hallway connecting the living room to the bedroom. One night, she woke up thirsty and headed to the kitchen for a glass of water. The apartment was dark except for the faint glow of the streetlights outside. As she walked back down the hallway towards her bedroom, she froze. At the very end of the hall, silhouetted against the dim light from her bedroom window, was a figure. It was tall, impossibly thin, and just standing there, it wasn't moving. It wasn't breathing. It was just a solid black shape where a person shouldn't be. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of it. A trick of the light, a coat hanging on the door. But no, it had the distinct shape of a head and shoulders. She was paralyzed with fear, unable to scream or move. She squeezed her eyes shut, counted to 3, and opened them again. The figure was gone. The hallway was empty. She sprinted into her room, slammed the door, and didn't leave it until the sun was fully up. She broke her lease and moved out the very next week. For our final story, we join a Redditor who bought his first house, a charming little fixer-upper on the edge of town. He loved the place, but there was one odd thing about it: a small sealed door in the basement. It was old, made of thick wood, and had been painted over so many times it was fused to the frame. The previous owners said it was just an old coal chute that was sealed for insulation. For months, he ignored it. But the curiosity gnawed at him. One weekend, armed with a crowbar and a hammer, he decided to open it. It took hours of prying and hammering, but finally, the door groaned open. He expected to see a brick wall or an old, dusty chute. Instead, he saw a small, cramped space, barely big enough for a person to crawl into. And on the back wall, scrawled over and over again in what looked like charcoal, were the words, "It sees me." That wasn't the worst part. Lying on the floor of the tiny space was a small, tattered children's book and a single, child-sized shoe. He sealed the door that very day, this time with concrete, and tries his best not to think about what or who was seeing someone from inside that wall. And that's a wrap on our 5 dives into the creepy side of Reddit. It makes you wonder what stories are hidden in the quiet moments of our own lives, doesn't it? Which one of these gave you the most chills? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed getting spooked with me, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more explorations into the unknown. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Stay safe and remember to check behind you. See you in the next one.